Motivation's gotten a bad rap these days. It's like some taboo word, and we're supposed to only rely on discipline and smart goals, and you need more willpower, and you lack self-control. What if that was only the second part of the story? What if there'd been something missing all along that you never gave enough time and attention, and it is the secret to getting unstuck too? I'm convinced that when we are stuck, or if we never got started in the first place, it might have more to do with a lack of imagination than a lack of a to-do list. So instead of crapping on yourself for not doing what you were supposed to, consider that you weren't creative enough. Consider that you didn't give this creative step enough air to breathe. Consider that you weren't emotional enough. Yeah, eventually you'll need discipline and goals and willpower, but what you need right now is an inspiration. Now back to goals and accomplishments and things that we see that we marvel at and we're impressed at. Let's deconstruct how anyone does anything that seems impressive. My guess is that first they saw something, maybe they heard it, maybe they watched it, maybe they read it, maybe they felt it, and by their definition, they thought it was cool. I mean, right? I mean, even if you think that it sucks, they thought that there was some merit to doing it. Now, when I say cool, I'm not conjuring up the Fonz. But they were so emotionally drawn to what they experienced that they wanted to feel that way over and over again. And so they weaponized those emotions for action. So if you find yourself stuck and say exercising regularly or eating like you, maybe you need a better design. Maybe there's some different logistical consideration. But to start, you have to forget all of that. Now we're going to remember this together with the mnemonic device Triple D. Now that's very similar to the Triple Deke from Mighty Ducks, but this one isn't quite as fast. It's a little bit more deliberate. It takes a little bit more thinking, but it no less includes the letter D. So first is discover. What gets you emotional? Seriously. What, when you watch or read, creates an emotional response in you? Emotions aren't an obstacle. They're a means to get what you want. So listen to that. What do you think is really cool? Now, cool is an opinion, but it is the emotion that can get the stuck tires moving to action. Don't start rationalizing. Don't start comparing. Don't start judging yourself. You were watching that Netflix documentary about that girl running in the desert and you thought that her outfit was cool? Right on. Lean into that. You read that Argentinian chef's cookbook and you were really inspired by his al fresco dining? Keep going. Now, for some of us, we may be lacking inspiration, and it's not from a lack of input or stimulus around us. If that's the case, it's totally normal. But what I do know about you is that you have a past. You have things that if you took a trip down memory lane, you could remember that you were really engaged with. These are activities that maybe growing up, you were really inspired to do. Why were you so enraptured by being outside next to water at summer camp? What was it that was so moving about that? You loved dressing up. You loved taking on a certain costume and a certain air of authority when you were a kid. Why is that? What was so important about that, and what was so enjoyable about that? Now, if you're able to gather some intel from either your current surroundings or maybe what you experienced in the past, bring yourself back to the present. What's important now, and how could you feel that way again? How could you connect the dots to what you know you should be doing and what you feel really emotional and inspired by? Take those things that you loved, take those things that you once thought were cool, and see if there's a way that you can reappropriate them for the life that you live now. That takes us to the second D, which is dream. Forget about rationality, forget about logistics, and don't jump too quickly into design. Imagine, literally use your imagination for what it might look like to do something like that. Get as many books on the subject, watch as many podcasts and documentaries as you can get your hands on. Become an aficionado on what it means to be this person. What would they wear? What words would they use? How would they have to act? Imagine yourself doing things like this person. What would life be like? How could it enhance everything? Get as clear as you can with where you see yourself doing all the things that this person might do at your age and your life stage. Don't be afraid even as an adult, to have a good game of pretend. Start by doing some silly things that this person might do. Go buy a chalk bag from REI. Start saying the word stoked and gnarly. Go get that bandana that you saw that girl wearing while she was in Moab. Look, you want to be a sailor? Well, you better get yourself a shirt, you pirate. Now, the last D is design. Don't weaken the emotions. You want to weaponize them. Don't start switching into
logistical executive function mode. Let me make a to-do list and make this really boring.
Find ways to magnify these emotions. This is a vibe. This is a feeling. This is in an environmental context. Ask the questions, what would this person do on a regular basis to feel cool? To feel like they're that person. Try some things out. You want to run an ultra? Well, guess what? There's a certain way that those guys eat. There's a certain way those guys recover, sleep, talk, dress, relax. What are all those adjacent activities that make up the big one? What's cool is that this may be way more accessible than you think. Start designing your life to look like that so that every time you do it, it starts to feel like that person you discovered and dreamed about. Now, before we wrap, there is a caveat to this. There is an asterisk. What we're talking about is very powerful. It does work. In fact, give me an example of someone who's done something really noteworthy and tell me that they didn't dream about it first. I don't think that exists. But you can, as you well know, take this too far. David Goggins is really inspirational, but his life looks like it sucks.
Man, I've trained 99% of my life alone.
Right? You can take this emotional state and you can have it overtake your life. So the one little caveat is do this to get going. You're stuck, dream a little bit, discover a little bit, design a little bit. But be smart once you get some momentum going. So in closing, losing weight and exercise because it's good for you is basically living someone else's dream. It's a nice sentiment, it's a nice thought, but you don't really believe it because you haven't really dreamed about how that can make your life better or cooler. Likewise, those that seem to continue to do cool things are just those who never gave up on dreaming. They never gave up on being inspired. They weren't embarrassed to pretend. This has been a monumental statement about incremental change brought to you by the good people at BPR.
Subscribe!